Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad to have you with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We've got bad/crazy, good, and definitely crazy martinis for you today. So a lot to get to. Jim, first of all, I just want to give a little bit of shout out to Mrs. Columbus. It's often when you have a wonderful wife, then you find out other amazing things about them after you've married them. Yesterday after dinner, she looks at me and she says, "Tonight, do you want to watch Die Hard?"
Oh,
wow. Yeah. How about that?
I'd say she's a keeper, but that's pretty evident for a long time. But I'm just saying, I'm glad the passion is still there.
Yes, exactly right. Yes, it is now part of our official Christmas rotation. The kids are nowhere near old enough to watch it yet, but we certainly enjoyed it. Anyway, on to our fodder for today. And Jim, let's start on Capitol Hill. In fact, two of our three martinis deal with testimony yesterday on Capitol Hill. This was on the House side yesterday, and the presidents of Harvard, Penn, and MIT were testifying before Congress. And Elise Stefanik, the GOP conference chairwoman, asking a fairly simple question to all of them. It's a very long excerpt, so we're only going to show the one between her and the president of the University of Pennsylvania. But the question simply is, hey, what about a speech that calls for genocide on your campus?
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
yes
speech
or
becomes
no?
if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
Yes, profiles encouraged there at the rostrum. And of course, Jim, you know, it's when it comes to free speech, as you always say, it's protecting the most odious speech that you can hear. And so it's not just free speech that we like, but when we see things like we saw at Cooper Union, where people were banging on the doors to try to get to the Jewish students in the library, calls for intifada, which Stefanik and the president of Harvard got into, and the president there's like, oh, well, maybe if they call for intifada. Of course, the obvious hypocrisy here, Jim, is that these presidents would not be so mealy-mouthed or wringing their hands about the proper approach or the proper wording in public to their policies here if it were something to do with race or the feminist movement or the LGBT crowd on campus. They would not be equivocating at all. They'd be rushing out the video and the written statements in the strongest possible language, but now they just can't figure out what the right policy is.
So, Greg, that was some excellent questioning from Congresswoman Stefanik. The only question I would have put there, because these, university presidents have made very clear how just seemingly unthinkingly they will metaphorically hang themselves with their words, and that you don't need to pounce and pound the table. What they're saying is inherently outrageous enough. You don't need to gild the lily. Would be the question. Can you give us an example in which calling for the genocide of the Jewish people would not be bullying or harassment? And I'd love to see them just kind of stare. My expectation is they would stare dumbfoundedly back, because it's really hard to come up with a good or pleasant, context for calling for the genocide of the Jewish people or any other group of people. Now, those of us who have been complaining about cancel culture over the last couple of years, we've never argued that any employee should be able to say or do whatever they want never with having any ramifications at their workplace whatsoever. As I commonly say, if you walk around with a Nazi armband, if you choose to groom your mustache so that it's a little square between your nose and your upper lip, and if you have a copy of Mein Kampf on your desk every day and you run around saying, Sieg Heil, your boss is going to call you into the office, say, clean out your desk, you're gone. And it's going to hold up in court because employers do not want self-evident Nazis working for that, because people will not want to work at that business. People will not want to partake of that business. There are certain actions and behaviors that are so beyond the pale and so self-evidently repugnant to so many other Americans that an employer is entirely within their rights to say, hey, you know what? You can have those beliefs, but you can't do it here on company grounds. There's the door. Take a hike. We don't want to be associated with you. The problem is, universities have made very clear that this does apply. Like I saw one of my colleagues at the Washington Post making the First Amendment argument, and that you don't want universities getting into the job of judging which speech is offensive and who should face some sort of discipline for making offensive speech. And it's like, well, we've been in that world for decades now. It's been abundantly clear that if you say anything even remotely right of center, there's an excellent chance somebody's going to file a complaint, that you're going to get reviewed by HR, you may get suspended, you may get fired, we've already established this precedent. So the idea that all of these university presidents have suddenly said, oh my goodness, we've discovered the First Amendment. Oh my goodness, we've decided that free expression of ideas is really important. Like, we can point out, you guys are willing to say this in the context of calling for genocide, but you won't do it for like lowering tax rates. Or heaven forbid you say that people are born men and women. Heaven forbid you misgender someone. DEFCON 1. Bring out the SWAT teams. This is the worst thing possible. But calling for genocide, that we have to have an open mind about. No, this is BS. This is absolute nonsense. We've already seen this ludicrous double standard in place. And all that's being asked really is the mildest application of this long-standing idea that if you say something sufficiently abhorrent, that there are professional consequences that be applied to certain students, certain professors. And the university presidents are saying, no, we can't do that. We have to protect that speech. And we're going to pretend like we're interested in protecting any speech from right of center figures on campus, assuming you can find them. But that, we all know what's going on here. We all know what's happening here. Excellent questioning from Stefanik. And I've heard people, there are a lot of people say these universities, they have huge endowments. These university presidents think they're untouchable. The Biden administration is never going to give them too much grief about this, and they're fine. Well, someday there could be another Republican presidency. Secondly, if you're in a red state, Republican governors are going to go after this. I imagine most of these universities are in, blue states. These universities are just creating a thing where there's a broad bipartisan consensus that they are the problem, that they do not believe in freedom of speech, but they are willing to stand up to defend students who call for genocide. And donors hear it and donors sense it. And you saw a whole bunch of people who are not right-wing conservatives, who are not Joe Rogan listeners, who are not, right-of-center folks looking at this and saying, this is nonsense. This is an insane double standard. Why are you guys bending over backwards to defend calls of genocide? So we'll see how this shakes out, Greg. But, just a remarkably revealing moment up there on Capitol Hill yesterday.
Yeah, college administrators, man, they will not confront their radical left-wing students. They just won't do it. They'll defend them to the hilt every time, and that's what we saw yesterday. Very, very weak. All right, let's talk about our great sponsor for today, and that is 4Patriots, makers of a lot of incredible products, including the Patriot Power Blender, the Leafy Green Hydro Garden and Floral Seed Kits, Aztec Chili with Mango Survival Food Kits, and the Sun Kettle Solar Cooker. Of course, there's the Patriot Power Generator 2000X, which we talk about frequently, but there's also the best-selling Survival Food Kits, which are delicious tasting. They last 25 years if stored properly. They come with real meat and vegetables, so you're getting actual good nutrition when you have these meals. They're perfect for taking on camping trips, but most importantly, they're great to have in an emergency. If for some reason you can't get out to the store, Whatever else is going on, all you need is the emergency food kits, some water that you can boil over a fire. You put in the food, you simmer, you serve, and you enjoy hot meals until order is restored. Visit 4patriots.com/martini to see this week's discounts and deals before they are gone, and get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our good martini now. And there is a debate brewing in the United States Congress, has been for some time now, because in the next several weeks, in addition to the fight over funding the government, there is what to do about FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. The House Judiciary Republicans want to make it so that any information gathered under Section 702 of FISA, which is basically designed to allow the U.S. to gather information on foreign suspects. But sometimes when you gather information on foreign suspects, information from Americans is gathered up in that. And the Republicans want a warrant to be required whenever American information is sought to be investigated by the FBI. And so that's the debate right now. Chris Wray was on Capitol Hill, the FBI director, yesterday, making a passionate case for renewing 702 as a result of the work dealing with foreign threats. He specifically mentioned Iran and China. But when it comes to how 702 is applied currently, Senator Mike Lee of Utah going straight after Chris Wray and whether Americans' rights are being respected. And the answer apparently seems to be no.
The FBI is already required to obtain a court order in some circumstances before accessing the contents of Americans' communications in the context of 702. They're already required for that in some circumstances. Since 2018, how many times has that requirement been triggered, according to government reporting? Do you know?
You talking about the so-called F2?
Yes.
Yeah. How many times has it been triggered?
Yes.
I think there have been 2 instances where I think is maybe the number.
103 times it's been triggered. And out of those 103 identified times, the FBI should have obtained a court order. How many times did the FBI actually obtain one? Do you know?
That, I think the answer is none.
0. So you're telling me that the FBI has completely ignored the limited court order requirement that it's already subjected to. You have the audacity to come here, and you told us that adding a warrant requirement to 702, even for queries involving U.S. persons on U.S. soil, that would amount to some sort of unilateral disarmament. You have a lot of gall, sir. This is disgraceful. The Fourth Amendment requires more than that, and you know it. I know every single time for centuries, even prior to the founding of this country, there were similar protections built into the laws of the United Kingdom before we became a country. Even then, the government was making the same darn argument you're making today, which is it's too hard. This would make it hard for the government. It's why we have a Constitution, sir, and you must comply with it.
You know, it goes back to other things we've seen, like when the Obama administration was trying to skirt the 2/3 to ratify treaties because, you know, it's too hard, as Mike Lee was saying there. Obviously, you know, it's a balance. You want the government to have the ability to, you know, sniff out the threats from foreign adversaries. But Americans have constitutional rights, and the Fourth Amendment is, well, in the top 4 and pretty high up there. So we should demand better of our government, and good for Senator Lee for doing it.
Yeah. Mike Lee has been a bit more outspoken. You've probably seen the references to based Mike Lee. This is a rare moment where, you know, and I haven't liked all of these changes, but I'm completely with Mike Lee on this one. It's good to see the FBI director getting berated for these sorts of things. Wray also gave a very weak answer on, you know, what discipline would an FBI employee would face for making those kinds of searches without the appropriate procedures. Couldn't even say it would mean a revocation of the security clearance. Lee makes the point. He's been on this committee for 13 years, and he's talked to FBI directors appointed by both parties, and they always tell him the same thing. Don't worry about it. We've got new procedures. It's going to be different now. And every few years, we have some new revelation that finds that the government is scooping up all kinds of communications. And the FISA courts, which were supposed to be a protection for this, first they approved, what was it, like 99% of all applications or something like that? Like, you know, either the FBI is just fabulous at how they write their applications to these FISA courts, or the FISA court has become a de facto rubber stamp that, you know, okay, yeah, go ahead, go look at these guys, it's fine. And look, it's been years and years since we had the Snowden revelations, and it seemed to kick up a lot of dust then, but I didn't really see, don't worry, we got it better. We're going to be much better at this. And then every few years we get more of this. And there's two things that appear intractable about this. One is that the FBI and these other law enforcement institutions that are supposed to be operating with safeguards that ensure Americans' Fourth Amendment rights, they just won't. They'll make whatever promises they have to. They'll sign off on whatever legislation, and then they'll just ignore it. And that, despite the idea, Greg, I have my doubts about Americans will ever really get that upset about it. They might answer a certain way in a poll, but you've heard almost nothing about this on the campaign trail on the Republican side. There's certainly no indication that anybody on the Democratic side, they'll abolish the police, but they won't put restrictions on the FBI for FISA warrants. There's something kind of bizarre about this. So I hate to tell you this, libertarians and civil libertarians, but I think the FBI has demonstrated that they can ignore these restrictions, they can ignore the Constitution, and in the end, suffer very, very few consequences for it.
Hey, everyone. This is Sarah Carter from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks so much for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. We could all benefit from heart-healthy energy, and one of the best ways to do that is by supporting your blood pressure and circulation. Super Beets Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure, paired with a healthy lifestyle. The antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. Folks, I take my Super Beets with me everywhere. They are delicious. They come in little squares and foil, and you just put them in your pocket. You can take them with you anywhere and everywhere. You take them out, take them in the morning, and you feel great all day long. If I'm in New York, if I'm in Florida, if I'm in Chicago, if I'm in LA, I've got my Super Beets with me. They're plant-based and stimulant-free, so you get a productive, heart-healthy green boost without the jitters. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and a free full-sized bag, listen to this, of turmeric chews valued at $25 by going to americalovesbeets.com. Can't beat that. Get this exclusive offer only at americalovesbeets.com. That's americalovesbeets.com.
We are getting our pockets picked. As we send billions of your tax dollars to countries like South Africa to stop burning coal, are they cooperating? No way. What's the climate agenda's next goal? Going after methane. Be prepared to get our pockets picked once again. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast.
All right, Jim, on to our final martini now, and it is the crazy one, and this is indeed very crazy. We kind of rolled our eyes and scoffed a few weeks ago when a bunch of Hill staffers, I imagine predominantly Democratic Hill staffers, went very, very public about how they're pressuring their bosses to demand a ceasefire in the Middle East. And of course, there was the several-day pause, quote unquote, for hostage releases and so forth until Hamas violated the ceasefire. But of course, the war is back on now, and the lefties, the young lefties in Washington, are not staying quiet. But this time it's not staffers, Jim. It's interns. Yes. Now, I love Radio America interns, especially the ones who listen to the podcast. But in terms of the interns trying to affect policy by going public, Jonathan Allen with the story at NBC News, a group of White House interns joined the growing list of administration officials applying internal pressure to President Joe Biden to call for a permanent ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, sending him a letter late Tuesday that accuses him of having, quote unquote, ignored the pleas of the American people. We, the undersigned, Fall 2023 White House and Executive Office of the President interns will no longer remain silent on the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. And on it goes. And so, Jim, when you go public with this, I think it means everybody ought to be kicked out and lose their internships. If you want to say something to your immediate boss, who's probably like 14 levels below the chief of staff, go ahead, and then they'll laugh at you or roll their eyes and ignore you the rest of the time. But the impression these people have of their significance in town is something else.
Yeah. So first of all, as I probably told the story at one point or another after he passed away, at the final days of intellectualcapital.com back in the late 90s as an intern, former Delaware Governor Pete DuPont asked if I was dropped on my head as a child when I made a particular suggestion. So like you Gen Z kids, maybe some of you millennials, you don't realize, like, as an intern, I'm not going to say your role is to be pooped on. But just kind of to observe that, like, you are the lowest person on the totem pole. You're the lowest person on the ladder. Your duties are probably going to, I was going to say photocopying. Maybe they don't even photocopy anymore. Your duties are going to be very low. Your duties are going to be very, low responsibility, basic. It's going to be the drudge work. And I don't mean as in leaking to Matt Drudge. Making coffee, going out for sandwiches. Like, I did all these things on my internship. You are not going to feel like a vital member of the team. And the reason you're going to feel that way is because you're not. You are the easiest cog to replace. Your job when you get there is really to be a sponge, is to be around other people, watch how professionals work, watch how they do it. When they need help, get to do it. Way back in the, Mesozoic era of my younger days, at the Dallas Morning News in the Washington Bureau, I was there for a semester and a summer. And first of all, it was a paid internship, which was great. I think at that point it was minimum wage. I was answering the phones. I was putting together, when the newspapers came up from Dallas, I'd put them in the files, take messages for people, some photocopying. Somebody would ask me to get stuff out of the archives. Really basic work. Then after a couple of months, I was allowed to cover the National Spelling Bee for 2 days. I got 2 newspaper articles in there. And then one day, David Jackson, who last I checked is with the USA Today, covers the Justice Department, great reporter. One day he said to me, there's a press conference, might have been at the White House. Get over there, take notes, get quotes. I can't be there. I got something else I got to do. And I got quotes from Deval Patrick, who went on to become, at that point was Associate Attorney General, went on to become the governor of Massachusetts. And those quotes got into a story that ran in the Dallas Morning News. So in 6 months, I got 3 articles. And I felt like I was walking on air. And that's a lot. That's a really good day, good time. Interns don't get to do cool stuff. And you know what else interns don't get to do, Greg?
What?
Set foreign policy. White House interns, nobody elected you to a darn thing. So be quiet, do your job. Oh, like the other thing is also, like, if you really genuinely, I can't work for this president, then quit. Some people will admire you for it. Some people will think it's ridiculous and stupid. But by doing this, we can no longer be silent. Therefore, I'm not putting my name on this letter. No, it does not work that way. You get to do one or the other. And if you aren't, but first of all, you are, I'm assuming, anywhere from 18 to 22, maybe 23. You don't know anything in this life. I know you think you know a lot. You probably went to a very good school, but you actually don't know that much. And I say this as somebody who is absolutely convinced that he did know a lot at 18 to 23 and did not understand why the, Dallas Morning News was not giving me all these terrific assignments and stuff like that. Look, you are at a learning stage of life, learn. And, just to finally conclude, my colleague Dan McLaughlin made the, unbelievable observation that, Greg, can you believe we're missing the good old days of a good, healthy relationship between the president and interns like back during the Clinton days?
Oh, gosh, that was too cozy, way too cozy. But yes, you know what? The intern's going public. That's the worst part. That's the thing I think you can't paper over here. If they want to say something to their immediate supervisor, maybe even they grab Zients in the hallway, which I'm sure he would not appreciate, or even if you get a second with the president, which would be way out of line, probably. But to go public about your dissatisfaction with the administration that took you on as an intern is pretty brazen here, and be interesting to see how much more they're going to take from this. They say they heed the voices of the American people and call on the administration to demand a permanent ceasefire. We are not the decision makers of today. True, but we aspire to be the leaders of tomorrow, and we will never forget how the pleas of the American people have been heard and thus far ignored. So, yes.
You are the coffee fetchers of today, and don't you forget it.
Breaking news, Jim. Breaking news. Kevin McCarthy says he is resigning at the end of the month. So with the Santos expulsion and the McCarthy resignation, does that put us south of 220? This is getting pretty tight.
Greg, as of this moment on Wikipedia, 221 Republicans, 213 Democrats, 1 vacancy. Take that away, it's 220 Republicans, 213 Democrats. So I think you could have another, you're still 2 above 218. Getting a little nervous, but they'll have to schedule the New York one sooner or later. I don't think you can go all the way to November 2024 on that. So they're going to have a presidential primary day. It'd be an easy day to put a congressional special election in there. But yeah, getting a little close, getting a little nervous.
We also have a presidential debate tonight, so I know everybody's furiously excited about that. First one on News Nation, though. It's Megyn Kelly and Elizabeth Vargas and Eliana Johnson, a National Review alum, now with the Free Beacon, doing the moderating. So only 4 on stage now, so we're getting closer to what you want with that. Trump, of course, won't be there, but DeSantis, Haley, Christie, and Vivek will be there. So we'll see if anything significant.
And I will be live blogging for both National Review and the Washington Post at the same time tonight. Feel free to join. Also, Greg, my reaction was very much like a line from the old television show Community. Oh, Vivek's in this? Oh, he's
not mesmerized.
Here?
You're not mesmerized, I can tell. Jim, enjoy the debate. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell a friend about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Wednesday and join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.